So welcome everyone to the monthly networking for nonprofits meetup. I'm James Burke. I'm your host today. I work for Arctic Consulting. We help businesses and nonprofits with their technology needs. I'm a former Microsoft engineer. A lot of people that run nonprofits aren't aware that if you're a registered 501c3, there are free offers you can get from Microsoft, Google, and Amazon to help with your nonprofit needs. And so if you are interested in that, let me know, and I'd love to help you out. We do free consultations for nonprofits. So Linda Akey and I organize this nonprofit networking meetup every month, and we're really pleased this month to have a guest speaker who's very prominent in her field. Gazala Uradnik is president of GFS Events, and she'll be speaking with us today about hybrid events and virtual events and kind of how we're all going to adjust as we get back recovering from COVID and back to doing in-person events. How can we take these lessons learned that we've had and apply them to virtual events and hybrid events moving forward? So why don't we first, before Gazala starts off, kind of go around the room and everyone can introduce themselves to the group. We have a lot of folks that are here for the first time. So if you want to just kind of unmute and spend a minute or two introducing yourself to the group so we all know who you are and where you're coming from. Why don't we go first with, I'll just kind of go down the list on the participant screen. Donna Austin, why don't you go first?
I am with the Seattle Peace Chorus, and I forget now, at least 3 years we've been working with GFS, and we love them. We could not have been successful without them. And so, of course, when we heard that they were, she was talking at this event, we said yes. So good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the Peace Chorus, Donna.
Oh, the Seattle Peace Chorus. It's been a choir that's been around, oh gosh, for over 30 years. It started with the Cold War in the 80s with Russia, and they've traveled there several times. And since travel has been a big part, but we sing for peace and justice with hopefully musical excellence.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Well, welcome to the meetup.
Thank you.
Next would be Judy Gladstone.
I'm Judy Gladstone. I'm with the Washington Association of Sewer and Water Districts, and we're kind of like a trade association for the public elected officials for the sewer and water districts that are located throughout the state. There's about 108 of our members out of the 180 that exist throughout the state. And we also have associate members that are like the engineers and the consultants and the accountants, et cetera, that serve those districts.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Next would be Martha C.
I'm also on this call with the Seattle Peace Chorus and dittoing what Donna said, 3 years with GFS, and they've been fabulous, easy to work with, a ton of ideas, attention to detail, right down to the last everything. And we've raised more than we needed all 3 times. So.
Very cool. Congratulations for that. All right, next would be Megan Bartel.
Hi everyone, I am pretty new to the Seattle area. I live in Bainbridge Island right now. And I'm currently working for an independent school doing fundraising. My background is in fundraising, recently graduated with my master's of nonprofit administration. And I recently ran a donor appreciation event virtually. The school that I work for is in California. So my mind, I'm just thinking a lot about the future of events and how that will look going forward. And this kind of event that we recently had with about 100 people, I was, surprised so many people showed up because it's kind of the end of the COVID restrictions, but people were still, excited to be there. And I'm curious if I'll still be able to run virtual events remotely from up in Washington, or kind of just learn about everyone else's experience and see what you think the future is going to look like in terms of events. So nice to see you all and be here for the first time.
Excellent. Welcome, Megan. Next is Sarah McKnight.
Hi there. Thank you for the warm welcome and for setting up this forum. Megan, I really understood what you were saying about the future of nonprofit fundraising, and I'd really like to know how Martha raised too much money. I want that problem. I want it. My friend and I have just founded a nonprofit here in the Portland area. Sadly, even though I've been living in the Portland area, raised in the Portland area, I do not know much about Seattle, but I'm really excited that you made this available on the Portland Meetup forum. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And it looks like we just had someone join, Anna Hollander. We're just kind of going around the room, Anna. So if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly, we'd love to hear more about you.
Yes, thank you, and apologies for being late. I'm sure as fellow nonprofit people, you all understand how timing can be with wearing many hats and things like that. But my name is Anna Hollander. I currently work for a nonprofit called 211. It's actually, the one I work for is located in Los Angeles County, but I have recently moved to Seattle. The blessing, I guess, of COVID was because we moved to remote and completely virtual operations. I was able to do that and continued working for them. However, now that I'm in Seattle, I'm trying to find ways to engage with the community here and start learning more about my fellow nonprofit peers in this area. So I'm really excited to be here and meet you all.
Awesome. Welcome, Anna. Okay, I think we've covered everyone. So next, what we'll do is we'll have a presentation from Gazala and any questions we have for her. And then afterwards, we'll do a couple of breakout networking rooms so that folks can get to know each other a little bit better. That's what we always like to do at this meetup. So I'll turn it over now to Gazala. We'd love to hear what you have to say about virtual and hybrid events.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me today, James, and for all of you. It's wonderful to get a chance to meet you via Zoom and virtually. And I'm going to glance down at my notes because I usually have two screens. I don't today. So I want to make sure I am able to share my screen with you and then also see my notes. I have had some internet difficulties today, of course. So if you can't hear me at some point, or if I'm slowing down or unstable, I might just turn my video off. Sometimes that helps, especially when screen sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the presentation. I'll tell you a little bit about us and our work, and then and I'm excited to chat with you. I'd love to, if you have questions that pop up, feel free to throw them in the chat if you want to just remember them as we're going through, and then we can answer questions and of course have more conversation towards the end. So excellent. So we're going to talk today about virtual and hybrid events. We'll talk a little bit about what is a virtual and hybrid event. I think everyone at this point knows, at least to some extent, what a virtual event is. But how do you plan one? What do you do? What are the key elements? What are some examples? We'll talk about examples and best practices, and then we'll talk a little bit about trends for the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future, but these are some of the predictions that we have coming up from what we're hearing out there in the community, in the live events industry, as well as in the nonprofit world. So a little bit about GFS Events. We are a full service event management company. We specialize only in nonprofit events. We don't do any kind of corporate events or weddings. And part of what sets us apart from other companies and other event planners is that we come into your event as an extension of your development team. So we're really looking at every aspect of your event, whether it's in person, virtual, hybrid, with that development director's eyes. And we're looking for cost savings. We're looking for increased donor engagement and ways to grow your fundraising. Most of our clients tell us that they raise more with us than they could without us. So that's always wonderful to hear. These are the types of events we do. Galas and auctions are a huge part of what we've done in the room. Back in in-person events, we do community events, large-scale community events, races, golf tournaments, luncheons, breakfast, those types of kind of you know, like a 1 hour event with not necessarily raise the paddle, but just envelopes on the table. And then of course we've been doing almost exclusively virtual events. So in 2020, we took 35 events virtual, and then we're on track to produce over 40 virtual events, virtual, in-person, and hybrid events for 2021, possibly a little bit more than that. And so our success rate for the past year and a half has been pretty tremendous. And it's, again, it's not because we have a magic potion, but it's sort of that we're using some of the real tried and true nonprofit 101 fundraising techniques to make some of these things happen. We'll talk a little bit about that today, because that's what I think, regardless of what kind of event you have, these are some of the things you'll have to do no matter what type of an event you plan. So most of our events were anywhere from 65% of goal all the way up to 150% of goal for some of these events. And also those that saw maybe less, they didn't meet their 100% goal, actually still saw closer to their an increase in the net that they produced from the year before, especially if it was an in-person event. So what is, let's talk about these three areas here. So we've got the in-person event, the virtual event, and a hybrid event. So one of the things that we found as we were moving from in-person to virtual is that people thought we could really take the elements of an in-person and directly translate. We just want to record it, right? Like that's what we want to do and make it a virtual event. That's not the case. And now with virtual, with a hybrid, you're not really talking about, it's not half and half. That's really not what it is. So what we found for an in-person, you can imagine an in-person, right? You know kind of what that might look like. If you're doing an auction, you've probably got a cocktail hour, perhaps there's a raffle, there might be some games, there might be a dinner component, a raise the paddle, a testimonial video, an ask, etc. Those are really easy and clear because everyone's been to an in-person event, or perhaps you've helped produce one. With the virtual event, again, not a direct translation, we have seen everything under the sun for virtual. From live streams, professional live streams that look like almost like it's like producing a movie, all the way to Zoom cocktail hours, to just pre-recorded videos. So those are all very different. And then hybrid is even more different than that. So we'll talk about a couple of examples around hybrid and how we were able to help clients actually produce hybrid events. I've got two examples near the end that I'll talk about. So in terms of a virtual event, I think the thing that we found this past year is that virtual events really brought out a lot of creativity. You know, I think as an event manager, we think we're being really creative in person, and I was thinking, oh, virtual, like how are you creative in that? I feel like it brought out even more creativity in what we had to work with and how we were able to engage people. So we found that every event we've done so far has been different for every nonprofit. You don't have that same formula as the in-person world. It is very different from nonprofit to nonprofit. They have similar elements, but the look and feel has really been different. In terms of a hybrid event, I like to give this little scenario. It's kind of comparing the Ellen show to the Oscars. So when you're talking about a hybrid event, what people are thinking about are a few different options. One is the Ellen show experience, where you've got a studio audience. And so perhaps you've got people in cocktail rounds or in seats watching your show, watching your live performance that's going to be live streamed. The studio audience is the backdrop, right? They're not the main show. You might see them, they might be a pan to the studio audience, people are clapping, but there's really no audience participation necessarily, right? Like that's usually what the studio audience is like. And then you've got something like the Oscars, where a similar experience where people are watching, but there's a lot more engagement with the audience to the actual show. So we're looking at a couple of these as hybrid options. Is how do we engage the audience that's there watching, as well as live streaming? Because that's one of the things and trends for the future, is that nonprofits are realizing I don't have to only share my mission, the vision, the story with the people in the room. We can live stream this. We can get this out to hundreds, potentially thousands of people, especially if it's being watched again and again. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about. And then I'll talk a little bit later about a couple of ways we did a couple of hybrid events. So before, though, we talk about those examples, I really want to kind of set you up for what are the successes for an event, whether it's in person, virtual, or hybrid. I want to talk about some real key factors that I think are important to think about. And the first is, what are your fundraising goals? So how much do you need to raise to survive? And then how much do you want to actually raise so that you can thrive? So for 2020, most of our clients held their same goals. That was our recommendation. We had some clients say, oh, if we're going to go virtual, maybe we should reduce our goal by half. We said, no, let's keep the same goal that you have for your in-person event. And some of our clients increased their goals, believe it or not, from their in-person. For 2021, same kind of thing. Everyone is keeping their goals consistent with what they had projected for an in-person event. Your need hasn't changed, I imagine, which means your goals shouldn't change in terms of, don't reduce them. Keep them, whether it's 50,000 or 500,000, keep your goals to what you think you would want to raise for in-person. For 2022 and beyond, I'm really projecting that we're going to see, again, because we're going to continue to see people wanting to live stream, wanting to record, wanting to send this out. I think there's going to be more dollars raised because we're not limiting it to what's in the room. But then what are your other goals? So there are monetary goals, but there's also additional goals that are either about building awareness, perhaps it's a connection with your community. And the thing about both a virtual and hybrid event is that we can reach a wider audience. We can showcase additional programs. We can rebrand. We had one client who wanted to raise a very small amount, and their event was really not about fundraising. It was about highlighting the organization. And so we were able to produce a really amazing, almost 2-hour program that was watched by people across the country, and something they had never done before. And they couldn't have really accomplished that if that had been an in-person event. So to them, the success was the awareness and reaching out about their organization, and not just the monetary goal. Budget, huge factor. I know you all are thinking about your budgets all the time. So for the in-person world, you've got your venue, you've got your caterer, AV, decor, we know what all those costs are. For the virtual, here's a couple of examples. You've got your event platform, you've got your videographer, graphic designer, web designer, printing, mailing, all of those kinds of things. Of course, an event management company, if that can fit into your budget. A hybrid event can be double the cost. I will say, as we are starting to plan hybrid events, we are finding that you've got the cost. If we're going to have the experience, be in a venue with catering, and then we're going to live stream that, and then we're going to try and get engagement from the people at home, it's not only double the cost, it's double the work. And then the question I kind of raise is, will it be double the return, right? Will you get the return on your investment? And so we're talking through some of those things right now with clients, is that, do you really want to live stream the entire program? Does that make sense? What's that going to look like? And what does that mean for costs? The next piece is engagement. And this is something that we talk about a lot, because engaging not only your board, your staff, your volunteers, but also your audience. You don't need a significant number of volunteers in the virtual world as you do in the in-person, but when you're talking about hybrid, you're getting back to needing people again. And so looking at, in terms of engagement, what are the strengths of board members, staff members, volunteers? How do you want to engage them? You know, you might have someone who's been a gala co-chair from the board, who loves doing the decor and loves doing those pieces. That may not be as necessary when you're talking about virtual and hybrid. So how do you engage that board member who's got that creative mindset and wants to do something really fun and you know, in that kind of that decor realm, but now we're talking virtual or hybrid, and we don't need all of that. So what are the ways to do that? What are their strengths, and how can you include them so that they feel like you know, this is that they're being helpful and producing for the event. Some of the other roles that we find that work really well for a virtual and hybrid are things like a content creator, someone who's creating your marketing emails, graphic designer, auction procurer, virtual ambassador, and we'll talk a little bit about virtual ambassadors. But once you've answered and set your goals in place in terms of budget, goals, you know, your engagement, then we're going to look at the different elements of a hybrid and virtual event. And so again, these aren't any different than what you would do for in-person, but just a little bit tweaked a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about timing, structure, platform and logistics, marketing, outreach, and then telling your story. So timing, a 3-hour in-person event cannot be a 3-hour virtual event or a 3-hour hybrid event. Hybrid are even different. We actually did a hybrid event. We turned a 3-hour in-person event into a 5-day hybrid event, and I'll talk about that. That actually was very successful and worked really well. But the one thing that is a benefit about the virtual space and the hybrid space is that you have time to tell your story, so you don't have to limit it to a certain amount, and no one's going to sit and watch a 3-hour program. No matter how compelling your mission is, it's hard enough to capture someone's interest for an action-packed movie, let alone a nonprofit mission. So it is important to do those bite-sized pieces. What we've seen work the best is either that 2 to 3 day format, the week-long format. We've had clients who have done the month. We recommend not doing a month of anything. It's just too taxing, and you're going to burn out your staff, your volunteers, and your donors. So timing is everything, and figuring out, again, the timing that works best for your community. Structure is next. And so one of the things we look at when we're trying to think about our virtual and hybrid event is, what were the components of the in-person, and which of those components are we going to carry through to the virtual and hybrid elements? So did you have an auction? Did you just do a straight raise the paddle? Did you just have envelopes on the table? Did you use a table captain model? In fact, we've had some clients who've always done an auction in the past decide, when we're moving online, we're not doing auctions, a silent auction. We're just going to maybe strictly keep it alive, or we're going to scrap the auction altogether and just do straight donations. So those are the kinds of things. And then also, what are the elements? Are we going to do a Zoom cocktail hour, a happy hour, a live stream? Are we going to have home parties? So another element of the hybrid, and we did this with an auction that we just did this last month, a month ago, where it was a crab feed. And so people picked up their crab meals, and then they went to individual board members' homes and watched the live stream together. So, and then we actually shared their pictures and photos that were being sent via the social media on the live stream, so people could see themselves online as well, as it was all happening. The next piece is the platform. So again, whether we're going to go hybrid or virtual, what are some of these elements? What are the platforms we're using? If it's an auction or a donation, there's several out there that are great. Octree is one of them, Greater Giving, some of those others. What are other ways of communication? How are you sending out your newsletters? If you have strictly a donation based event, perhaps you're doing something that's more peer-to-peer fundraising. With our runs that we've done, we've used an app called Race Joy, which allowed people to run virtually, individually on their own, and then share their times. And we actually were able to award medals for first place and second place based on the app. And then, of course, are we live streaming this? How is that being live streamed? And is it going to be on YouTube, on your website, on another platform? So those are all kind of the platform options and what to think about for that. And then the next piece for hybrid is logistics. So that's something that's kind of that double the work I was talking about. So with, like, for example, that crab feed, we had a certain time frame where people could pick up their meals. We had board members and staff members passing out the meals. So we have and then we also have done events where we've delivered items, so delivered packages, delivered things. With Seattle Peace Corps being a good example, we did a dessert dash and had donors deliver desserts for people that had won those desserts. So those are kind of the logistics piece. And then permitting, if there's any permitting, and I by that also mean like licensing for alcohol sales, things like that. There's some considerations, especially in the state of Washington, if you're in the state of Washington. And then safety. So we're talking about COVID compliance. Potentially things are going to be lifted in the very near future. But people are still cautious. And so what does that look like if you are planning an event in the fall in person, which we are for many, many clients in person, but also, again, a little bit of that hybrid option. What does that look like for the people in the room? Are we going to do contact tracing? Are we going to make sure we have everyone's name? Are we going to be taking temperatures? What are those kinds of things? So thinking about safety as we move forward into that in-person and hybrid world. The next piece is talking about how to reach your donors. So marketing, of course, is one factor, and that's something that no matter what type of an event you do, we're seeing marketing being the biggest factor in success. So whereas you may not have done as much marketing when it's an in-person event, because once they bought their ticket, especially if it's $150 or more, they're going to come to your event, right? And once they've come, if you build it, they will come and then they will donate. Doesn't apply always for the virtual and hybrid world. So we need to do a significant amount of marketing. So newsletter, email, social media. We're also recommending, when you are in that virtual and hybrid space, that a physical mailer is really important. So whether that's an invitation, a save the date card, those seem to be a real factor, because it's something tangible that someone's receiving. And since they're not necessarily in person like they would in a normal event, in-person event, it's nice to have that tangible piece. Looking at the types of channels that you use for marketing, we talked a little bit about the email, the website, the different platforms. One of the biggest factors is that virtual ambassador piece, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But we're also using a great deal of social media. There's a couple of platforms out there I don't know you've heard of, but you can actually connect all of your social media to like a donation platform. So as people are going to your site to see things, they can see the posts that have been done, especially if you've shared a hashtag. We're doing that with one client, and it's really cool. Every time you go on that donation platform, you see the latest hashtag of people posting with, for the event. So that's been super cool. So using those virtual methods are going to be important in connecting with your donors and your audience. And then one of our biggest reasons for success with either a hybrid event or a in-person or a virtual event has been donor outreach. So one of the things that we counsel our clients is that if your goal is $100,000, whatever the goal is, I'm using 100,000 because it's easy math. We recommend that we have in place pledged or secured, whether it's through sponsorships or just known pledges, at least 80%, 75 to 80% of that goal. And for those clients that we've been able to do that, we've been able to reach their goal and surpass their goal. And it's just good old-fashioned donor outreach, reaching out to donors personally, connecting with your donors ahead of time, saying thank you to your donors. Those are the kinds of things that we're encouraging you to do, and you should do that even into the future, right? Even into, if you don't already, into 2022 and beyond, because that is important. I think a lot of nonprofits, it's a lot of extra time and effort, and sometimes you have the in-person event, you're spending so much time on logistics around that some of this goes to the wayside. For a virtual and hybrid, this is so important because you aren't getting them somewhere where you're going to just be able to make them get their attention and only their attention with a virtual event. If it's pre-recorded, the phone might ring as they're watching, so they're distracted. So it's important to get those donations and pledges ahead of time. Reminder that it's important to use the you-centric model. So donors aren't giving to you, they're giving through you. They're making something important happen and doing something through the work that you do. And so again, back to donors, why do donors give? And so that's something that we ask our clients to really think about. Why is your donor giving to you, and how can you reach your donors to make sure that they are aware of the good work that their dollars are doing for your organization? And then what we've been doing with virtual and hybrid is we've been reaching out to donors months before. So 3 to 4 months before, a phone call to say thank you, and then at least 2 more touches via the old-fashioned phone model, not an email, not a text, not a newsletter, but actually calling people. Virtual ambassadors have been one of the ways we've also reached people. And again, it's similar to the in-person model. So whether you are looking at, the table captains, where you had table captains in the past, virtual ambassador, I think, will stay that. And the reason I like that word, that term virtual ambassador, is because even into the in-person world, when we get back in there 100% full time, a virtual ambassador, you can be a virtual ambassador even if you're not attending. I mean, how many times have you all heard, oh, I'd love to attend your event, but I'm out of town that weekend? With a virtual event, we've said that's okay. You can still attend, you can watch later, and you can still give. And we want to kind of keep that same momentum going for virtual ambassadors into the future. So we are able to do more with virtual ambassadors, because whereas a table captain can only fill 8 or 10 seats at your event, a virtual ambassador can contact 30, 40, 50 people. So that's kind of their reach, can be across the state and sometimes across the country as well. So we talked a lot about the different elements of the types of events. And I wanted to see if, oh, actually, sorry, I have one more thing here. The maximizing the experience. So this is the other piece that I wanted to mention about a virtual and hybrid event. And this is something that we are still struggling with, is how do you maximize the experience for the individuals, whether they're in the room or they're watching from home. So if we were having an event in a space and we're live streaming it, say it's an auction, how does the auctioneer engage the people in the room and the people at home? There's a lag when you're live streaming. It's about anywhere from 15 seconds to 30 seconds. So how does someone at home see exactly what's happening in the room? They really can't. So those are the kinds of things that we're kind of struggling with too. I don't know if we can talk a little bit about this at the end, but that was one of the conversations we had with our clients, is that maybe it's not possible to maximize the experience for both. Perhaps we can't have the person in the room be 100% engaged and the person at home be 100% engaged. So who are we maximizing the experience for? And then who's going to have a lesser experience because of that? So perhaps the people at home aren't going to have that full experience. Perhaps the only thing you're live streaming to them is your program, your ask, your video. Maybe they don't get to see the whole live auction until it's done because they can't really participate the way they could fully in the room. So again, those are all kinds of questions that we're asking. And I think engagement, again, in person, virtually, hybrid is going to be a really important factor in moving forward and making sure that your donors continue to give to you. And then communicating your nonprofit story. So this is the other piece that we've really worked with quite a bit for our clients in the virtual space and in the hybrid space. I think in the in-person world, we're going to see more of this. I feel like we're going to do a better job of storytelling. The videos are getting much more tight. We're doing some really great things. Instead of producing one brand video, 3 to 4 minutes like you've seen in the past, now we're producing maybe 5 or 6 vignettes, and those vignettes are getting sent out in different pieces. And I think that will also continue into the future, is that we'll still maybe have an in-person video, and then perhaps there'll be additional outside stories that are told and sent out too. So can you picture your event yet? Have you been thinking about what it might look like? I don't know if you're planning, which type of event you're planning. We're planning all 3 for 2022. So we have several events, 2 as a matter of fact, coming up that are going to be 500 and 600 person events. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward as we're planning. That's actually coming up in July and August. We're planning virtual events all the way into December. We have clients that we just signed on with who are like, nope, I'm going virtual, at least for 2021. And then we've had some events we've already done that are hybrid. And then we're planning additional events that are in that hybrid realm, which are, we're having the in-person, we're live streaming it, and we're trying to figure out how to engage that live streamed audience as well. So I'm going to talk about 3 case studies that we just want to present, just to give you an overview of what the event looked like and what happened with each event. So this one, we picked Ignite Worldwide because this one in particular was one of the very first events that we had to pivot to a virtual event. It was supposed to happen in March of 2020. And so we were actually only 2 weeks away from the event happening. So we had to move very, very quickly and make this event a virtual event. It was supposed to be a 400 person event at the Bellevue Hyatt in Bellevue, Washington. And the original goal was actually 365,000. This is one of those where they changed the goal to 500,000 when we went virtual. The reason they upped the goal by that much is because there were 2 events happening. One was in March, one was in May. The May event in San Francisco got completely canceled because of everything happening in California, and we combined the 2 events. And that's why the goal went to 500, because we figured we can invite the San Francisco group to this event as well. We decided to turn it into a week of giving because we needed more time to reach out to people. We went pretty low tech because we didn't have a lot of time and experience. So we did the online auction. We moved very quickly to an online auction. The auction had already been completed. Like, we already had all the items. And then we did a virtual Zoom call with breakout rooms. So this ended up being about an hour-and-a-half event. We marketed the videos. What we did is we asked, this is an organization that provides STEM education for young girls. So some of the auction items were really large ticket items like the CEO of or CIO of T-Mobile having lunch with her, or having dinner with the VP of Alaska Airlines. There were some really high-tech people in the company, all women, who were donating their time and giving back to Ignite. And so they made small videos. We did short videos with them via iPhone, and that's how we marketed the auction. And so we also did a video documentary, and then we did a kickoff video. So this is the auction page as an example. So you can see we had dinner at Ascend with Elizabeth Hunter, who's the Senior VP of Technology for T-Mobile. She did her own video talking about what this would look like, as well as her connection to Ignite. So that's how we marketed this beyond just the page itself. And then we had the online auction open for a full week so that people could bid, and then we closed the auction at the actual Zoom call event that we did. We added a raise the paddle online, the thermometer you can see, and our final results were, we did 368,000 for the event. So comparing the net in 2019, which was our highest year ever, they had made 211. So the 2020 net was 336,000. And even though we didn't reach their lofty goal of 350, we actually reached we surpassed the original goal that we had set in terms of net. This next event is an event we did this past April, and this is a hybrid event. This is Key to Change. Key to Change is a small nonprofit that supports underserved youth in South King County, and they do music instruction. So they have a festival called the Solo String Festival that brings middle school and high school violinists together to perform and compete. So you can see the competition this year was half virtual, half in person. The kids actually we partnered with Benaroya Hall, where the kids could come and actually do their performance. That performance was live streamed to the judges and to the audience. So no one was at Benaroya Hall, but people were watching. And then we did this for 2 days. So it's a 2-day festival, and the culminating event after the festival ended was the fundraiser. And so the goal for the fundraiser was $100,000. Again, the 3-day event, we used online donations as our structure. And then for marketing, we did a teaser video. We had partnered with the Seattle Symphony, and then we also did radio spots with a partnership with Classical King FM. And then our homepage, you can see this is their landing page for the event. And then this is really cool. This was where the festival was actually housed. So it was right directly on the platform. So on the left, you could actually have watched this violinist playing. And then on the right is the chat box. So people can say, wonderful job. And so people were interacting as the kids were playing. And then at the end of the festival, we had our presentation of awards, and then immediately followed by the fundraising ask, which happened live at Benaroya Hall by the executive director. This is an example of the donation page. We used actual pictures rather than stock images in terms of highlighting the reason for giving. And then we also, these are our social media posts. So we did a variety of different types of social media posts. For example, 1 week away, a sponsor shout out, and then a thank you post as well. So results, we raised 135% of their goal, so $135,000. It was we netted higher than any event they had ever done. And then even though the actual festival itself wasn't the in-person feel, because I don't know if my kids did like solo ensemble, and going to those events was amazing. We were still able to allow parents to still hear and watch and share with family. So that was the other piece. is that, you know, you might not be able to have grandma come to the actual festival, but now she can watch it while it's happening live if she lives somewhere other than locally. So that was a really cool factor of that. This last event is called, is for North Helpline. So North Helpline is a small nonprofit located in Seattle, and their mission is to assist neighbors that need basic needs for human dignity and worth. They have 2 food banks, and they provide financial assistance and also have a health clinic. So the original event that they do is called Empty Bowls. And the event itself is an in-person event. So pre-pandemic, it's in person, and the way it works is they have this large venue, about 300 to 400 people, actually closer to 300 people attend. They purchase ceramic bowls that are made by artists, and then soup is served in the bowls, and then they bid on auction items and make donations. So the goal for this event was to raise $38,000. We switched it to a full week, and we did an online auction. So we did the soup and bowl purchase online, and we did daily videos and a social media challenge. So the way what we did instead of the in-person 300-person in-person event, we changed it to a 5-day 100-person event. So still through COVID, everyone, you can see masks are on. This was done in late March, early April of 2021. And so you can see that what we did is we had people timed. We had like a 2-hour event each day for 5 days. We partnered with various local restaurants and locations. So they hosted the pickups. So every day you could sign up for one day, you could sign up for all 5 days. And each day we had about 100 people attend, which so ultimately it was more than they had in person. The soup was donated by local restaurants. We had vegan options, all these different really awesome soup options. The soup itself was free. So one of their missions is never to turn anyone away. So the bowl was $25, but the soup is free. So we had people, we had homeless people come, and we were giving away free soup. So it was a really wonderful event, and it was amazing to see that each day we were packed. I mean, 100 people came through within that 2 to 3 hour time frame. So we were at various locations. The food bank was one of the locations. We did a local brewery. One of the board members owned a restaurant, so we did a restaurant as well. We also hosted a social media challenge, and we had an auction. So this is their auction page. You can see they always did an auction, so that was something we wanted to continue. And we turned it into an online auction as well. And then the social media challenge was to share. So we wanted the word to get out. So we had prize drawings. We were originally thinking it was going to be a scavenger hunt, but we turned it into a trivia challenge instead. It was a lot easier. But we basically asked for people to share the event website, to share a picture of themselves as they were picking up the soup or having the soup at home, and then sharing the bowls that they purchased. And then tagging and continuing to share. So that challenge actually worked really well because people were sharing that. And again, this is an interesting hybrid event because we took an event where you had 200 to 300 people attend, and actually over 500 people participated. And then we also did videos. So they hadn't done videos in the past. We produced 5 videos that were shared each day of the actual fundraiser. Results, 137% of their goal. It was higher than any of their in-person event. You can see their goal wasn't super high to begin with, but you know, that was their in-person because of all the costs they had. They netted more than they've ever netted before, and they had a huge success rate, not only in terms of dollars, but we had people, since we were at 5 different locations in 5 different areas, we had people who had never heard of North Helpline come and attend and learn about who they are and what they do. Okay, so take a quick drink of my water here. Future event trends. I'll be real brief on this and quick on this, but I want to kind of talk about this. As I said, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think that these are things that we're going to see. And those are elevated experiences, online auctions, and then I think we're going to continue to have a virtual hybrid component to every event moving forward, no matter what kind of event you're doing. So elevated experiences. This has really been happening, and I'm sure many of you have tried something similar to this, but we've been doing gala boxes, food boxes. We've been giving out champagne and chocolates to high-level donors, actually making deliveries. We've been doing dessert dashes. We've done trivia, scavenger hunts. So if you can't bring people into a ballroom and have that experience, how are you going to elevate their experience so that they're feeling like they're doing something and they're part of the actual event itself? And so I think that this is something we're doing even with our in-person events. We've talked about how the in-person, people who are buying a ticket and coming in person and having their dinner, what about the people who might be watching from home? So because again, not everyone's going to feel comfortable being in a room with 300, 400 people, even as early as September or October of this year. So for those that aren't, how do we still engage them? How do we do something really great for them? We would never have thought of doing that before, right? You weren't interested in if someone at home not being at your event, but now we're realizing those are people you can still engage. So those are some things that I think we're going to be seeing into the future. I also think, and I've seen this a lot, is just basically scrapping the silent auction. Silent auctions are a lot of work. They're very little return on investment, but online auctions can reach a lot more people. So having an online only auction option, and then if your event has a live auction, great, but online will reach more people and potentially make more money. The other piece on this is we're doing a lot more mission-based experiences. This is one of our clients that's based out of Portland, and they are a small nonprofit that actually allows kids to not only build planes, but also fly planes. So it's a really, really cool organization. And so almost every single one of their auction items was somehow related to their mission. So we did a drone package where they could fly planes. We did a lunch with one of the pilots. So things that were, again, mission based instead of a basket of spa items, things like that. I think that is also a trend, is that getting away from the stuff. I think that's something we've learned throughout the pandemic, is I'm not sure people want the stuff, but they really want the experiences. So how can we bring the experience of the organization to our donors? And then the virtual and hybrid event component. So I think you're going to see into the future that things are going to be more pre-recorded. We find pre-recorded items and events are so much less stress. And so perhaps there's some components of that pre-recorded. Maybe the executive director doesn't have to go on stage and be nervous. That entire speech can be pre-recorded and it can be shown, and then it can be shared afterwards. So I think we're going to see more pre-recorded types of things throughout your program, even if you're in person. Live stream, I think we're going to start to live stream more. I think that's something that can continue to happen, so people can watch maybe not the entire 3-hour program, but they're going to watch perhaps just the raise the paddle portion, or just the ask, or whatever component you want them to do. And I think people are going to tune in more often, because they've been used to that. So if they can't come to your event, you can still invite them to tune in to a portion or pieces of the event so that they can participate. Okay, so just to recap, we talked a lot about kind of the structure, defining your goals and budget, determining who your key players are. And then these are the elements that you really need to solidify before you start planning and as you plan. So timing, your structure, logistics, your platforms, your marketing, and then of course your donor outreach. I'd love to get any questions. And also on this slide here are all of our handles. We'd love for you to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We offer a 30-minute consultation. So if you'd like to if you just have questions after this that weren't answered, or just want to talk about what your event could look like, I'm happy to sit down and just have a 30-minute chat with you to see what options might be out there for you. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen if I can find it, and see if we can have a conversation.
Thank you so much, Gazala. That was really great information. Who has a question for Gazala? Martha, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I want to just say, after you've heard us say, me and Donna, we've worked with them for 3 years, everything that she's talked about was incorporated as we moved from year to year. And so the creativity was so great, and you could see how creative they are in even just the pictures that you put up on your slides were creative with the signs and the packaging and all of that. But we were able to utilize a lot of that, and that was really, really helpful. So it was fun to relate to so much of what you're saying.
Awesome. Okay. Any questions for Gazala?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Please unmute and you can feel free to ask your question. Go ahead, Donna.
Oh, I was going to say, have you ever, the thing that intrigued me was the bowls, buying the bowls and, you know, serving the soup. And have you ever kind of had two groups, you know, like collaborate or cooperate together on something?
We've done that with a golf tournament. We had 3 separate nonprofits partner together and do a golf tournament. Their purpose for the golf tournament was community awareness more so than fundraising. But we were able to combine their strength in sponsorships, get more sponsors, and then ultimately the day of the event was a lot more fun just because it was like 3 organizations working together. They were also very closely aligned in the same community. So part of the reason for collaborating was that they would have, if they all had 3 separate golf tournaments, they would have all been reaching out to the exact same people. So we definitely have seen that happen before. And I think it just, again, depends on your exact goals for why you want to collaborate and what you want to achieve.
Judy, do you have a question? I see you wrote something in the chat there.
Yeah, so I was wondering about the technology like a 360 camera in your events, if you've used them, and if so, how has that gone?
You know, we have done a great deal of like studio production. So since we don't like own the cameras or anything like that, but we have worked with other studios locally that have done that. We've done a lot of events now outside of the Seattle area. So we had a client on the East Coast, and that was an interesting, we did that one as a live stream. So for that event, we had the cameras were set up in their location. They're actually an organization that helps provide nutrition support to kids. And so that we actually did it in their kitchen. And then the producer of the event for all the actual camera work was located in Seattle. And then we were, of course, also in Seattle. So it was a really interesting experience to have that. That was a static camera though. And then the producer was able to move the pictures around and actually do the chat and, you know, and actually live stream that entire event to several different platforms. But I think that we're also looking at doing something more in terms of like the green screen and that, but we haven't had experience with that kind of 360 approach.
Thanks.
Sarah, do you have a question? I see you wrote some stuff in the chat.
For a new nonprofit, I see that, yeah. She says, do you have any fundraising recommendations for a new nonprofit? My group is just getting organized and we aren't in a place to throw a large scale event yet. So I do. In fact, I have turned down clients who are just starting out, because I really think there's a lot of foundation work that needs to be done, and we're happy to help, but I think it's more cost effective if you are able to get your board and your, the key donors that you might already have to help with that support. So I would say the best thing to do for a newer nonprofit is to not have a large scale event, but to have smaller, more fundraisers rather than fundraisers, events that you are bringing your donors together. You're not necessarily asking for money just yet, because you don't want just the small checks. You want them to cultivate them for the larger checks. So talking to them about, the fact that you've just gotten started, that you are underway, and that what your goals are, what maybe your 1, 2, and 3 year goals will be. And then, and just sharing that information, again, once a quarter, whatever that takes. And I think laying that foundation, even for 6 to 8 months, will help when you are ready to then move forward with a fundraiser. And I do think you can still be primed, even as a newer nonprofit, to do something a little bit more lower key, all virtually. And you could probably do that very inexpensively, again, using some of the basic tenets of marketing, email marketing, things like that.
Are there any other questions?
I'm just curious with this group, if I could ask, just maybe with a show of hands, has everyone done at least one virtual event this year or last year?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah, Sarah, not yet.
I'd just like to make a comment, just, from experience of doing the virtual event. There's a temptation that if people can see it later, to say, oh, well, that's okay, you can see it later if you can't be at the event. And just from experience, I really discourage that, because there's really something about that group mentality that if you can get people there, then they get caught up in the excitement, and then they're more likely to donate. And Gazala, you said that along, and if there was a part of you like, well, they can see it later. And I just realized, from experience, that it's so much better if you can get them there. And then afterwards, if they can't make it, or if they genuinely can't make it, you can let them know. But anyway, that was
absolutely. No, I think that we definitely still encourage people to register and be part of the event, right? And then it's just there's a drop-off rate of people registering for something virtual and not showing up, as we all know. But yeah, I agree with you, Donna. I think that the sense of urgency and getting people to the event, whatever that event is, whether it's a 1 day, 1 week, or however long, I think it's important. But the beauty is that we're seeing that maybe even a month or 2 later, someone sees it on your website and just hits play and just kind of watches. Maybe they didn't watch the whole thing, but they watch 5 or 10 minutes of it, and it's like, oh, I hadn't heard about Seattle Peace Course before, or I didn't know about this, and they they're suddenly like, now they know about you, and maybe they'll be inclined to come to the next event.
And there are ways on YouTube to actually have a fundraiser for your YouTube video. So that's another thing you can do, is take a clip from your virtual event, maybe like a 3 or 5 minute clip, and promote that afterwards and try to raise money from that. So Martha, you have your hand up.
Make a short other comment. I also sing with the Seattle Labor Chorus, and we're pretty low key. I mean, our goal was $15,000, so it was pretty low key. But an idea that really, really worked well for us is that I invited Holly Neer and Billy Bragg, who was from England, to do like a sing-a-song. It was a sing-along was the point, is sing a song and then say something about the importance of labor. And they were both gracious, as you can imagine. And we had over 400 people from 10 countries all over the world that tuned in and gave some money and everything, and we raised above our goal. So think about maybe inviting somebody that might be willing to donate their services or maybe give them a modest honorarium that would attract people, you know, to tune in is another way to do that, as far as having, especially if people don't know about you, but you know, gee, they'd like to see Holly Near. Well, that's good. So that's just another thought.
I have a question, kind of, I guess I'll start general and then see if that works. But what kind of best practices have you found for engaging between the virtual and in-person people for hybrid events, or trying to engage both sides of that hybrid event in different activities?
Gazala, are you there? She looks frozen.
Well, if anyone else has thoughts too.
So it's the question, sorry, was basically different audiences. How do you kind of promote virtual versus in person? Yeah, so that's a great question. I know, let me share my story. So I volunteer for a nonprofit called the Mars Society. We're a space advocacy nonprofit. And every year we had our conference, and it was like 400 to 600 people. And we were pretty happy with that. We were plugging along. We had it at USC in 2019. And we would have, you know, donors there. We'd have a little auction, live auction during the Saturday night banquet. It's a 4-day event. So Saturday night we have a big banquet, and then we have a little auction at the end of that. So last year we knew we couldn't do an event. A lot of our kind of sister organizations just canceled their event completely. They didn't even try to do a virtual event. But our president, Dr. Robert Zubrin's a very creative guy, and he turned to me and he said, James, how do we do this online? How do we do our 4-day conference online with like everyone we'd ever want to invite? We can get them this year because it's online, they don't have to travel. And so, well, I said, we need to get Zoom, and we need to get a software that people could use to pick their session, because we have like 200 different sessions typically. The keynotes in the morning, but then in the afternoon we had 4 tracks going with different half-hour talks. So we ended up doing it all. We got everything online. I made 150 Zoom meetings, and we had software to pick and choose between them. They could actually watch the individual talks inside the experience. And we invited everyone we ever wanted, and we got them all. We got the NASA administrator, we got every Mars mission, people in Europe, people in Japan, and then we got Elon Musk, and he was our big kind of draw. We had him in the middle of day 2. And I was running the Zoom meeting on my laptop, just like this one. I had 1,900 people on the Zoom call, and another 6,000 watching the live stream. And then it got picked up by cnet.com. And so we had 100,000 people see that in the first 24 hours. So yeah, we were able to fundraise a little differently that way. Like I mentioned, you can fundraise on YouTube. We had little calls for donations during the breaks that we'd set, you know, we'd have speakers one after the other in the morning, but we would just have a little like, hey, it's free this year, but you know, donate $50 if you can to support our organization. We didn't stop during COVID. You know, we're all still trying to do our thing with getting the word out about space and Mars and stuff. So give us $50 if you can. And we raised a few thousand just doing that. And then we did our live auction. We did it virtually. We had an application people could use to kind of like eBay. You know, it was like our little private eBay, and we raised some money doing that. But really, it was all about like getting the word out. We got so many new members for our organization because it was such a bigger event, because it was virtual. So what we're probably going to do now that we've gone from 600 people in person to 10,000 online, we're definitely going to go back to in person eventually. Not this year. We're still going to do another virtual event in the fall because it's kind of too soon. But next year, we'll do something hybrid.
James, I'm going to piggyback briefly on one thing you said. You said we invited everybody we ever thought we wanted to come. And that's part of the key, is to think big, think outside the box, think, who would you love to have here? Who would be your pie in the sky person? And the fact that it's on Zoom, I mean, I never expected to hear from Holly Neer, and you know, she answered me. I mean, it was just, so the idea is to really think big, and you know, the worst that someone can say is no. And the fact that they don't have to travel or anything, and it's an hour of their time, if even that. I mean, she just did like a 10-minute video and that was it. So that was good. I loved when you said that, of everybody ever wanted to have there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have any of you, or Gazala, I don't know if you're able to, yeah, I see you moving now. Have any thoughts or best practice on how to, in a hybrid event, try to engage people in the same activity, both the people who are virtual and the people who are in person? So, you know, like an example would be, I guess, the auction people bring up a lot, how you would do that with both audiences or something like that.
We're in the middle of trying to figure that out right now, because we have a lot of clients who want to do that, just that one component, the live auction piece. And you know, the thought that I had is really the only way to do that well would be for everyone to bid the exact same way. So I don't think you can have the in-room people bid by raise the paddle, like an actual physical paddle, and then at home is doing mobile. I think you have to have everyone doing mobile, and then the auctioneer is then looking at the screen and seeing what's happening. And so that would be one way to make the experience the same for both. The downside to that is, we talked about this with our clients, like, well, why am I here then? If I'm going to bid on my phone, why did I get dressed up and come to this event just to be looking at my little screen on my phone, right? So that's what we're still struggling with, that, to figure out, you know, that you no longer are maximizing the experience for the people in the room. You've maximized it now for the people at home. And so so I don't know yet. We're also talking about doing perhaps maybe 1 or 2 items that people from home can be part of. So you don't get the whole experience, but this one item, which is, you know, really, really coveted, that you can bid on, and everyone gets to bid on that. So we're still thinking about it and trying to figure it out. If anyone else has any answers, let me know.
Have you done any other kinds of activities where you've been able to find a way to make it a great experience for both audiences?
Just the examples I gave were a couple of the examples for the hybrid. For the fall, what we're doing one event that's going to be outside, and it's going to be, so what we're going to do for that is we're going to stream the actual talk that's happening to the people at home, and then everyone there is going to, and then we're also going to do a video. But that's the only thing we've thought of. We haven't been able to figure out how to actually do like an engaging activity for both right yet. So that might be coming.
So this is Judy, and I guess we're kind of trying to explore the same thing, not for fundraising purposes, but just in general, because our members, now that they've had a taste of virtual, who are all over the state, would really like us to hold our meetings virtually and do hybrid. So we're looking, this is why I asked you about the 360 camera, because we're looking at some technology that might have a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Immersive experience is what they sell. And so that at least on screen, you can see the whole room and also see the individuals who are speaking. And so we've been like, okay, so how do we make that work? If it's a presenter at a conference, or, you know, could be the person who's doing the auction, do we have somebody tend the computer and we have a proxy for them in person? I don't know, but it's sort of trying to bridge that in a low cost, low tech way, because what we've seen is for hybrid, a lot of high production, which is very costly, might work when you have groups of, you know, several hundred, but for a smaller group, that's not really practical.
Any thoughts there, Gazala? I'll just share a little bit, Judy. There's a couple, it's like, I guess, can I ask you a question, Judy? Why do you what do you mean by immersive? Why do you want it to be immersive, and how would you define immersive? Do you want them to feel like they're in the room, or do you want people to like connect with each other somehow?
No, I want them to feel like they're a part of the room. So like when we did a test of just a hybrid group meeting, um, we had a camera that could see the whole room, but you can't really see the people and you couldn't hear them very well. You didn't really know who was talking versus the technology that we're starting to explore enables you to see the whole room and the people who are speaking because it travels to where that sound is coming from, which is great. So then how do you capitalize on that technology so that their experience can be bridged to what's being done in person and not just the experience of watching?
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's that would be a lot about setting it up in the room. You'd need someone that really knows what they're doing to kind of set the camera, the 360 camera up and the microphones up. There are some technologies that are around virtual rooms where it'll actually, it is a 360 camera, but it'll follow who's talking. And like, I know when I was at Microsoft, we had those at the conference room table and it would kind of follow you around. And if there were 10 people at the table, if you're watching virtually, it would be on the right person. So they're out there. It'd be all about finding someone that knows how to, like what they're doing to set that up in person. Another thing you could do is have more than one camera. And there are ways to kind of join a Zoom call with one microphone, but more than one camera. So Gazala, you're back. Any thoughts on her question?
Yeah, there's also a platform out there that's fairly new where you can actually you can be in a room together as like your own little avatar, and you're actually looking at the real space. And so they've taken, and I did a demo of this for the Chihuly Museum. So our whole team virtually went to the Chihuly Glass Museum, and we were able to walk around and see each other. When you got into a room, then you kind of appeared and you were right next to the person. And so it was kind of cool. I don't know if that would work in a conference space, but they basically map the room and then they create it visually, virtually, and then people are entering that room. So you can kind of see people walking around and moving, and that might be an option too. It's not quite that same immersive. Like I'm not going to be able to look over there and actually see James, but I can see his avatar, and then I can go up to him and say, "Hey, how's it going?" So it's an interesting product, and they just marketed it last fall, and I think it's getting more and more developed now. But if you want to just kind of talk to the group that's doing it, I'm happy to refer you to them. I don't know if it would be the right fit, but something to at least explore.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be the right fit either, but I would be interested if you could pass that along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we tried out a couple of things like that at our conference. We had an application called Wonder. It's at wonder.me, where you actually have like a little map on the computer screen, and you have a little guy and you can move him around. And when you get close to someone else, it starts a Zoom call with that person. So it's a good way for attendees to talk to each other and kind of have those one-on-one or small group conversations. And then I've also seen a virtual reality kind of version of that, where like Gazala was saying, you're in a room and when you walk up to someone, then you can hear them. And so you can sort of have the private conversation with someone that's in another city, and you're feeling like you're at an event that way. So that technology's coming. It's still a little kludgy and new. Some of them need virtual reality headsets, but it's coming. It's in all of our features. So.
Well, it's the same thing. The problem we have with the choir is the lag time. Choirs aren't able to sing together. And again, there are technologies, but you have to have certain equipment, and so I can't imagine. There's lots of people out there trying to jump on this, and create, resolve all these issues. Because if they did, they'd be millionaires.
There's definitely people working on it. I don't know if they're going to make $1 million with it, but some of them probably will. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much, Gazala. This was a really wonderful presentation. I learned a lot, and I know other folks did as well. Thank you so much. What we like to do at our meetups is have a quick round of networking. So we have a few minutes left. I'll go ahead and start up a couple of breakout rooms and put folks in them. And if I don't talk to you again, thank you for attending the Nonprofit Networking Meetup. And we hope to see you again next month. And enjoy the rest of your day.